The night I found the phone, the rain was tapping against the windshield like impatient fingers, and everything smelled like wet asphalt and cold air. I remember sitting in the passenger seat of Ethan's car, waiting for him to come out of the gas station, watching the drops race each other down the glass while the heater hummed softly. It was supposed to be a simple drive, a late run to pick up cold medicine for our daughter, Emma, who was burning up with fever at home. Nothing about that night was supposed to change my life. But that's the strange thing about betrayal. It always arrives quietly, disguised as ordinary moments. I reached into the glove compartment hoping to find tissues, and instead my hand brushed something unexpected. A phone. Not Ethan's phone. Not a phone I recognized. It was small, black, and taped to the inside roof of the compartment like someone didn't want it to be found. My stomach tightened immediately. I felt a cold rush shoot through my body, like ice water running down my spine. I don't believe in intuition as some magical thing, but in that moment something deep inside me whispered, "Don't open it." But my hands moved anyway. My fingers trembled as I peeled it away from the tape. The screen lit up with a soft glow, asking for a passcode. I stared. I had no idea he had a second phone. Ethan wasn't the type to hide things. At least I never thought he was. We had been together for 9 years. I knew the sound of his footsteps, the rhythm of his breathing when he slept, the way his eyes softened when he looked at Emma. We had built a family, a home, a life, brick by brick, and yet that phone in my palm felt like dynamite. I kept trying to tell myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was from work. Maybe he was holding it for a friend. Maybe I was overreacting. Because I was exhausted and worried. About Emma, I put the phone back, exactly where I found it, heart pounding so hard that I could feel the pulse in my throat, and forced myself to sit still just as Ethan opened the driver's door. He slid into his seat, shaking the rain from his jacket, and gave me that easy smile that always made me feel safe. "You okay?" he asked, brushing droplets from his hair. His voice was calm, warm, normal. That made it worse. I stared at him, wondering how much of the man sitting beside me was real. "Yeah," I said quietly, pretending to look out the window. "Just tired." He squeezed my knee gently. "We'll be home soon," he said, and I nodded even though everything inside me was screaming. The ride was silent except for the steady swish of the wipers. I couldn't stop thinking about the phone. My mind went 100 miles a minute, memories, little things that suddenly felt different, the extra late nights at work, the new cologne, the sudden password change on his main phone, the way he had been guarding it more recently, taking it with him even to the bathroom. I thought I was imagining those things. I thought marriage just changed over time. I thought we were just tired. When we pulled into the driveway, Ethan grabbed the plastic bag and rushed inside to check on Emma. I stood there in the rain, letting the water soak through my coat because the storm outside felt easier than the one inside me. I leaned into the passenger seat and opened the glove box again. The phone was still there. I took it. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I saw the faint blur of my fingerprints on the screen. I closed the compartment, slid the phone into my coat, and followed him into the house. I bathed Emma, kissed her warm forehead, held her tiny hand while she slept, and felt tears sting my eyes. I kept looking at her little face, wondering how people change, how trust disappears, how something so steady can suddenly collapse. At 2 a.m., when the house was silent and Ethan was finally asleep beside me, I slipped out of bed and went into the bathroom. I sat on the cold tile floor and turned on the hidden phone again. This time I typed in his birthday, nothing. Our anniversary, nothing. Emma's birthday, nothing. I almost gave up. But then I typed 000, the code he used for our garage keypad. The screen unlocked. My breath froze in my chest. My hands went cold. My eyes felt heavy, like they didn't want to see what was coming. But they did. And there they were, messages. Hundreds of them. A contact saved under only a letter. M. My heart hammered so violently I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I clicked the thread. The first message I saw was from earlier that night. "Did you tell her yet?" Followed by a string of heart emojis. My throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. The next message was from Ethan. Not yet, soon. Then another from M. I miss you. I hate sleeping alone. And then a photo. I don't know how long I stared. My ears rang. My whole body felt numb. It wasn't explicit. It was worse. It was intimate. Familiar. A woman curled up in a bed I recognized. My bed? In my house? While I was at my sister's helping after her surgery last month. A sound came out of my chest that didn't feel human. I covered my mouth, trying not to sob. Betrayal wasn't loud. It was suffocatingly quiet. Like sinking. Like drowning in still water. I sat there on the bathroom floor until the sun began to touch the edge of the window, holding a phone that tasted like poison in my hands, and I realized something. I never thought I'd feel... I didn't know the man sleeping in my bed anymore, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I sat there in the driveway for what felt like hours, but it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press them against my thighs to steady them. The night outside the windshield looked like a blur of streetlights and early winter fog, but all I could see was that single letter on the screen. M. Just one letter, but heavy enough to press against my chest like a concrete block. I wanted to open the messages. My thumb hovered over the icon, but something inside me froze. I wasn't ready for whatever truth lived beneath that touch. I locked the phone again and sat back, staring at my own reflection in the dark glass. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Her eyes were red, her mouth slightly open like she'd forgotten how to breathe. I whispered to myself almost like a prayer. Don't fall apart. Not yet. I slipped the phone back exactly where I'd found it, adjusting the towel so nothing looked disturbed. I knew if Ethan sensed anything, he'd guard that phone like a vault. I had learned long ago that men don't hide things unless they have something to protect. I walked inside slowly, trying to gather myself before turning the handle. The sound of laughter hit me first, the easy, relaxed kind that used to come from both of us. Except this time it was only him. He was on the couch, feet up, watching a late show, a bowl of popcorn between his hands like nothing in our world was threatened. When he turned to look at me, his face softened into a smile I once felt safe in. Hey, he said casually. Took you long enough. Everything okay? I forced a small smile and nodded. Yeah, just a long day. I sat next to him, pretending to watch the television, but my heart wasn't anywhere in that room. I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger wearing my husband's face. Every time his phone vibrated on the coffee table, I felt a jolt in my body like I'd been struck. He didn't check it, not once, and that alone told me something. People don't ignore something they're unafraid to show. My mind kept circling around all the possibilities of who M could be. A coworker? Someone from the gym? Someone from his past? Or worse, someone I knew too well? A tightness began forming behind my ribs, and I swallowed to push it down. I didn't want to accuse blindly. I needed clarity. I needed proof. So I waited. The next few days passed like walking on shattered glass. Every morning I woke up before him, watching him sleep like I was studying a stranger. He showered, dressed, kissed my cheek mechanically, and left, never once with the ease he used to carry. And every night he returned, home like someone stepping across a line they weren't sure they belonged to anymore. I became hyper-aware of every shift in his behavior. The way he flinched slightly when his phone vibrated. The way he always put it face down on any surface. The way he typed with his body angled away. The way he started taking calls outside or in the garage. We no longer had conversations, just instructions. We didn't laugh anymore. We barely touched. We became two ghosts passing through the same rooms. And yet he kept acting like nothing was wrong, as if silence could hide a storm. I knew I needed access to that phone again, but not by chance this time. I needed a moment that seemed natural, and life, in its cruel way, handed it to me. One evening, he came home later than usual. His shirt still tucked perfectly, his hair neat like he'd spent an extra 10 minutes getting ready after work. He smelled like cedar cologne, the expensive one he only wore on special occasions or when he wanted to impress someone. He said he was exhausted and headed straight for the bathroom. He set his phone on the bed without thinking. I stood frozen for a moment, watching as he closed the bathroom door behind him. Then something inside me clicked into place. Calm, deliberate, cold. Not panic this time. Purpose. I walked to the bed and picked up the phone. The screen stayed locked, but I already had what I needed. I moved quickly to my dresser, took out my old camera, and photographed the front and back of the phone, including the SIM card details. Not evidence yet, but preparation. When the shower water started running, I knew I had minutes. My hands trembled as I typed different passcodes. Birthdays, anniversaries, lucky numbers, but nothing worked. And then I remembered something. The day we got engaged, he changed his phone password to a 4-digit combination that he said was something no one would ever guess. The coordinates of the beach where we first met. I typed them in. The screen unlocked. I nearly sobbed right there. I opened messages, scrolled to the letter M, and my heart nearly stopped. The preview alone read, "I miss you already." My chest tightened so painfully, I pressed my hand against it. I opened the thread, and the world tilted. There were hundreds of messages, long conversations, plans, secrets, and photos. The first message I saw from him read, "I can't wait until we're finally together without hiding." My vision blurred, and tears spilled before I could stop them. It felt like someone was carving into me with a dull knife. I scrolled more. "She suspects something. I can feel it. Don't worry. She's too trusting. She won't leave." Not yet. My hands shook violently now. I swallowed air that felt like sand. The shower shut off. I snapped pictures of the entire thread as fast as I could. Then one message caught my eyes and froze me entirely. "I'll see you at the lake house Friday. Same time." I stared at the signature line at the bottom of the messages. It didn't say M. It spelled out a name fully, just once, at the very bottom. Maya. And in that moment, the floor beneath everything I ever believed collapsed. Because Maya wasn't a stranger. She wasn't a coworker. She wasn't someone from his past. No, Maya was my friend. My closest friend. The only person I had trusted enough to tell about every fight. Every insecurity, every doubt. The person I introduced to Ethan 3 years ago. Right then. Something broke inside me so sharply I swear I felt it physically. But I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't confront him. I wiped my face, slipped the phone back on the bed, and walked out into the hallway. Quiet, steady, cold. I knew one thing for certain. Now, nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in the hallway, gripping the handrail so tightly my knuckles turned white, trying not to collapse under the weight of everything I had just seen. I could hear the sound of the bathroom door latch, water dripping from his hair as he stepped out. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like it might echo through the walls. I wiped my face quickly and walked back into the bedroom just before he entered, pretending to be folding laundry so he wouldn't see the shaking in my hands. He smiled casually, running a towel through his hair, completely unaware that the ground beneath him was already cracking. "You're quiet tonight," he said. I nodded, giving a tight smile. "Just tired," I whispered. And he bought the lie like a man who believed he was untouchable. That night I lay beside him in silence. The warmth of his body, inches from mine feeling like fire on skin that was already blistering. I replayed every memory, every holiday, every kiss, every promise, wondering how long he had been practicing the art of deception. I counted the breaths between us until the rhythm of his snoring told me he was asleep. I watched him sleeping like a stranger who had broken into my home. I had the proof. I had the screenshots. I had the truth. But I didn't have a plan, not yet. Anger wanted me to shake him, awake and scream every word that was ripping through my chest. But something stronger held me still. Strategy. I wasn't going to fall apart. I was going to win. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I slept peacefully, not because everything was okay, but because I finally knew the war I was fighting. The next morning was Friday. The lake house. He was already dressed before I even opened my eyes, wearing the same cologne from the night before, the same careful grooming. He leaned down and kissed my forehead like a man who thought he still deserved that closeness. "I'll be home late," Work thing? He said casually, grabbing his jacket. I watched him walk out the door and felt a strange clarity fill my lungs. As soon as the door closed, I got up, my movements sharp with purpose. I printed every screenshot. I packed a small bag. And then I drove toward the lake house. Not fast, not shaken, but steady, with the quiet focus of someone walking toward the truth instead of running from it. The drive was 3 hours, but it felt like driving through a tunnel of memory that was collapsing behind me. I rehearsed nothing. I prepared no speech. I just let the silence harden inside me like steel. When I finally turned onto the narrow road leading to the cabin, the trees parted just enough to show the view of the house sitting near the water, sunlight hitting the windows like glass knives. His car was already there, and parked beside it, Maya's silver SUV. My stomach twisted, but I didn't stop. I pulled in slowly, turned off the engine, and just sat there listening to the rush of wind coming off the lake. I could see them through the wide front windows, 2 silhouettes moving close together in the living room. His hands touched her face gently, like he used to touch mine. She laughed softly and leaned into him. My pulse went quiet. Not fast, quiet. I stepped out of the car, my feet sinking slightly into the gravel, each step sounding louder in the silence. I walked up the porch stairs and placed my hand on the door handle. I didn't knock. I opened it slowly, letting the cold air follow me inside. They turned at the same time, shock freezing their faces, guilt spilling instantly into the room like spilled gasoline. Ethan's mouth fell open. Maya stepped back. I didn't say a word. I just lifted the folder of printed messages and let them fall onto the floor between us, pages scattering like broken glass. The sound echoed. Ethan whispered, "Wait, let me explain." And Maya stuttered my name like she was tasting poison. I looked at both of them, not crying, not shaking, not begging, just calm. Ice calm. And I said the only 7 words that mattered in that moment. "No, you don't get to speak." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The room felt frozen in time. The sound of the lake wind pushing softly against the windows while the 2 people who once meant the world to me stood there speechless, looking like children caught with matches in a burning house they had built themselves. I could see Ethan's throat tighten as he struggled to form words. But I held up my hand, stopping him mid-breath. My voice was calm, steady, detached, like I had already left even though my body was still there. "You made your choice," I said quietly, my eyes never leaving his. "This is mine." Maya swallowed hard, her hands trembling, mascara smudging beneath eyes that once cried on my shoulder over heartbreaks. I helped her survive, never knowing she would someday deliver mine. She whispered, "I never meant to hurt you," and I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because people like her always believed betrayal was something accidental, like spilling water instead of shattering someone's entire life. Ethan took a step toward me, reaching out like I was supposed to save him from the consequences he had created. But I stepped back, the distance between us finally matching the truth. I took off my wedding ring slowly, feeling the weight of years pressing into my palm, and placed it gently on the small wooden table beside me. It made a soft sound, barely audible, but it felt like thunder rolling through the room. "This is the last time you will ever lie to me," I said, my voice steady enough to shake him more than any scream ever could. His face crumpled, panic breaking through the false confidence he always wore like armor. "Please, please don't do this." "We can fix it," he begged, and for a moment I saw the man I used to love, or maybe just the memory of who I thought he was. But the truth was clear. Love doesn't destroy you. People do. I picked up my bag and turned toward the door, feeling the strength in my spine like steel being forged. Maya stepped forward, her voice cracking as she said my name again. But I didn't look back. I paused with my hand on the door, letting one final breath fill my lungs. One last goodbye to the life I was no longer willing to shrink myself for. "You both deserve each other," I whispered. Not with bitterness, but with freedom. And then I walked out, closing the door behind me with the quiet finality of a chapter ending. The cold air hit my face like a baptism, clearing every last trace of doubt. I walked to my car slowly, not running, not broken, reborn. and as I sat behind the wheel, staring at the lake shimmering under the pale winter sun, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Not because everything was okay, but because I finally knew I was. When I turned the key, the engine started softly, and as I drove away, the cabin disappeared in the rearview mirror, like a ghost dissolving into morning light. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I just breathed deeply, freely, like a woman who had finally remembered her own name. 3 weeks passed, and the silence no longer felt like a wound, more like a room finally emptied of smoke. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms with sunlight that poured through the windows each morning, like it was reminding me I was still alive. At first, the quiet terrified me. I wasn't used to hearing my own breathing without someone else's rhythm beside it. I would wake up reaching for a ring that wasn't there anymore, my hand landing on an empty mattress that felt cold but honest. But slowly, I started filling the silence with pieces of myself I had forgotten existed. I signed up for a pottery class, my hands shaping clay, like rebuilding muscle memory for creation instead of destruction. I went on morning walks by the river, letting the air touch my face gently instead of the tightness of holding back tears. I learned to cook meals for one without feeling lonely, setting the table with intention, lighting candles even when there was no one to impress. I started journaling every night, writing letters to the woman I used to be, apologizing for all the times I stayed when I should have walked away. One afternoon, as I sat in the studio shaping a vase, my instructor paused beside me and looked at the piece forming between my palms. "You're making something strong," she said softly. "Clay remembers every pressure you apply. And when it breaks, it's only because it needs to be rebuilt better." I felt tears rise, not from sadness but from recognition. My life wasn't ruined. It was being remade. I began to laugh again, real laughter that came from somewhere deep, not forced to cover pain. I learned to enjoy my own company. I found old music I used to love before. I spent years listening only to what made someone else comfortable. I danced barefoot in my living room with the windows open, letting the wind tangle my hair like a crown instead of a mess. And with every day that passed, the woman I once thought I had lost returned, stronger, wiser, and no longer afraid of empty spaces. One evening, standing on my balcony watching the sunset melt into gold, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for closure anymore. I was the closure. The betrayal that once felt like a death had become something else entirely, a beginning. I whispered into the quiet sky, "Thank you for leaving." And for the first time, I meant it. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need what I thought I couldn't live without. I had myself, and that was enough. More than enough. It was a quiet Sunday evening when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't saved but knew instantly. My heart didn't race the way it once would have. Instead, there was a strange calm, like watching a storm from behind a solid window. I hesitated before answering, not out of fear, but from a place of strength, choosing rather than reacting. When I finally pressed the phone to my ear, Ethan's voice came through shaky and uncertain, a tone I had never heard from him before. "Can we talk?" he asked, like a man standing outside a locked door, hoping it might open if he knocked softly. I walked to the balcony, letting the cool air wrap around me. "About what?" I asked, my voice steady, almost serene. He exhaled loudly, the kind of breath people take when they're trying to rewrite a disaster. "I made a mistake," he said, and I could hear the echo of failure in his words. Maya left. She said I wasn't enough for her, that she deserved someone better. I thought she loved me. I let the silence stretch, the way silence reveals truth better than noise ever could. "Ethan," I said quietly, "she didn't love you. She loved being chosen." He swallowed hard. "I miss you. I miss us. Can we maybe try again?" For a moment, I closed my eyes, remembering the woman who once would have folded herself into that sentence, who would have taken responsibility for his brokenness and called it devotion. But I wasn't her anymore. "No," I said gently, not with anger, but with the softness of someone who has healed the parts of herself that once bled. "I don't love you anymore, and I won't return to a place I had to fight my way out of." He was quiet, stunned, maybe expecting tears or pleading, but there was nothing left to break. "You sound different," he finally whispered. I smiled, not because his words mattered, but because they didn't. "I am different," I said. I grew. When the call ended, I stood there for a while, letting the wind brush against my face. I thought maybe I would feel triumph or grief, but instead I felt peace, clean, unshakable, like standing in the doorway of a house that finally belongs to me. Later that night, I received a message from an unknown number. "You'll be alone forever. No one will want you." It had Maya's cruelty written all over it, sharp, desperate, hollow. Instead of replying, I turned off my phone and poured myself a cup of tea, letting the steam rise like warm breath against my skin. People crumble differently, some quietly, some loudly. And some, like Maya, try to drag others into their fall. But I was done falling. I sat by my small kitchen table, the candle flickering in front of me, and realized the truth with a surprising lightness. I didn't need them to fail for me to rise. I had already risen. The news spread through town faster than either of them expected. Not because I told anyone, but because betrayal has a way of leaking through, the cracks people try hardest to seal. It started when Maya showed up alone to a mutual friend's birthday dinner, dressed too loudly for the occasion. Her smile stretched thin like plastic, trying to hide a tear. People noticed the empty chair beside her, where Ethan used to sit proudly with his hand on my back. They asked casually, "Where's Ethan? How's married life?" And her expression crumbled in a way she couldn't disguise. She whispered something about temporary space and needing time, but the room shifted, the same way it does when a glass breaks and everyone pauses before speaking. Later that week, I ran into Mrs. Davenport, an older neighbor who had watched Ethan and I move into our first home. She stopped me gently outside the post office, her eyes full of empathy that made my throat tighten, but not with pain, this time with gratitude. "I heard what happened, sweetheart," she said softly, laying a warm hand on my arm. "You didn't deserve that, and I'm proud of you for walking away." I thanked her, and in that small exchange, I felt something final unclench inside me. I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't broken. Meanwhile, the whispers around Ethan and Maya shifted from curiosity to discomfort. Friends who once admired, their confidence began to see the truth beneath the surface. The way Maya spoke too loudly to cover insecurity. The way Ethan looked drained and smaller, like a man who traded his foundation for sand. One afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store, and as I walked through the produce aisle, I unexpectedly crossed paths with the two of them together for the first time since I left. Maya's smile evaporated the moment she saw me, replaced by something sharp and panicked. Ethan looked at me like someone seeing sunlight after months underground, too late, too painful. He reached out as if trying to create a bridge where the ocean already existed. "You look good," he murmured, his voice cracking. I nodded politely, stepping back just enough to make the boundary visible. "Thank you. I hope you both find what you're looking for." Maya's face twisted, jealousy flickering like lightning behind her eyes, because she expected me to be shattered. She wanted the victory of seeing me destroyed. Instead, all she saw was someone whole. There was a silence so heavy it felt like the shelves themselves were listening. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. The woman beside us, a stranger folding up her grocery list, turned toward Maya and said, in a voice calm but unshakable, "I don't know either of you, but whatever you did to her, I hope it was worth it." Then she walked away, leaving Maya frozen and Ethan staring at the floor like he wished it would swallow him. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. I turned and walked out of that store with the quiet grace of someone who survived the fire and learned to grow flowers from the ashes. For the first time in a long time, the sun felt warm on my skin, not like something I was borrowing, but something I finally owned. I drove home with the windows down, the wind in my hair, and a steady heartbeat reminding me that peace is not something someone gives you, it's something you reclaim. Weeks passed, and life settled into a rhythm that felt like breathing. Clean air for the first time in years. Healing didn't happen all at once. It came in small, quiet victories, waking up without a knot in my chest, sipping coffee without remembering pain, looking in the mirror and recognizing the woman staring back. One evening, I sat by the river that had become my refuge, the sky painted in strokes of lavender and gold, the water moving steady like time, refusing to stop for anyone's heartbreak. Families laughed in the distance, dogs chased sticks, and the world felt beautifully ordinary. I pulled my journal from my bag, the same one that once held pages soaked in grief, and I wrote a single sentence: "I'm proud of myself." As I read it back, tears slipped down my cheeks, not sorrow but release. Like rain washing a dusty window until the world becomes clear again. I realized then that love had not failed me. People had, and losing them wasn't the tragedy. It was the rescue. Somewhere behind me I heard soft footsteps, and an older woman with a warm smile paused, looking at me like she understood something unspoken. "You have a peaceful spirit," she said gently. "Don't let anyone take that from you again." I smiled through tears, nodding. "I won't," because I knew now that closure is not granted by apologies or explanations or regret from the people who hurt us. Closure comes when the story no longer controls our heart. I stood, brushing the grass from my clothes, and watched the sun sink completely, leaving behind a horizon full of promise instead of darkness. In that moment, I forgave, not for them, but for me. Forgave the version of myself who stayed too long. Forgave the love that blinded me. Forgave the silence that broke me. I walked back to my car feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. Each step a declaration of rebirth. Before starting the engine, I looked at my reflection in the window. A woman rebuilt, a heart stitched with gold, unshaken and unafraid, and whispered, "Thank you for surviving." And I knew, deeply, that the worst thing that ever happened to me had become the best thing that ever happened for me. I drove away with music playing softly, the night air sweet against my skin, stepping fully into the life waiting ahead. Because sometimes losing everything is the only way you learn to choose yourself, and I will never abandon myself again.